Have you ever thought of someone, and seconds later they message you? Tonight, we'll explore why this happens gently, slowly, as your mind drifts towards sleep. Let's begin by acknowledging something you've probably experienced many times. You're going about your day, or perhaps lying in bed at night, and someone crosses your mind. Not in any dramatic way, just a gentle thought, a fleeting memory. And then, almost magically, your phone lights up with their name. It feels uncanny, perhaps even a little mysterious. But tonight, as you settle in, as your breathing deepens and your thoughts begin to soften, we're going to explore this phenomenon together. Not with alarm or intensity, but with calm curiosity. There's nothing strange happening here, nothing to worry about. Just the beautiful, intricate workings of your mind doing what it does best. So get comfortable, adjust your pillow, let your shoulders drop away from your ears, and know that for the next couple of hours, we'll be exploring this together, slowly, gently, as your consciousness drifts between waking and sleeping. This experience of thinking about someone just before they contact you is remarkably common. You're not alone in noticing it. Millions of people around the world have had this exact same moment of surprise, this feeling of connection across distance. And while it might feel special, perhaps even supernatural, there are actually some wonderfully simple explanations rooted in how your brain works. Your mind is always active, even when you think it's resting. Right now, as you listen to these words, your brain is processing countless pieces of information. It's monitoring your breathing, maintaining your heartbeat, processing sounds, managing temperature, and running through memories and predictions about the future. It does all of this quietly, in the background, without you having to direct it. And part of what your brain does, constantly, is make predictions. It's always trying to anticipate what might happen next. This isn't a conscious process. You're not sitting there actively predicting who might text you. But beneath your awareness, your mind is running simulations, making tiny calculations based on patterns it has learned over time. Think about the people you're closest to. Your friends, your family, the people you talk with regularly. Over months and years, your brain has learned their patterns. It knows, without you realizing it knows, that your best friend usually texts around lunchtime, that your mother often calls on Sunday evenings, that your partner tends to reach out when they're commuting home from work. These patterns get stored in your memory, not as conscious facts, but as subtle expectations. Neural pathways that light up at certain times of day, in certain contexts, preparing you for connection. So when it's approaching the time your friend usually texts, your brain might gently bring them to mind. Not because you've decided to think about them, but because your pattern recognition system is humming along, doing its job. And then, when they do message you, it feels like coincidence, like magic. But it's actually something more beautiful than magic. It's the result of your brain paying attention, learning, adapting, and connecting you to the rhythms of the people you care about. Let that sink in for a moment. Your mind is always working to keep you connected to others, always learning their patterns, always preparing you for connection. There's another fascinating aspect to this experience, something called confirmation bias. But don't let the technical term worry you. It's actually quite simple and quite human. Your brain is designed to notice patterns and make connections. This kept our ancestors alive, noticing that certain berries were poisonous, that certain animal tracks meant danger, that certain weather patterns predicted storms. Our brains are pattern-seeking machines, always looking for meaning in the world around us. But here's the thing. We're much better at noticing when our predictions are correct than when they're wrong. Think about all the times you've thought of someone and they didn't message you. Dozens of times, probably, hundreds. But those moments don't stand out in your memory. They fade away, unremarkable, unmemorable. But when you think of someone and they do message you, that moment gets highlighted. It gets stored differently. It feels significant. Your brain essentially says, "Oh, that's interesting," and files it away as something noteworthy. So over time, you accumulate a collection of these remarkable moments, these apparent coincidences, while all the non-coincidences simply disappear from your awareness. This doesn't mean the experience isn't real. It is real. You really did think of them, and they really did message you. But the feeling that this happens all the time, that it's too frequent to be chance, comes partly from this selective memory. This natural tendency to remember the hits and forget the misses. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with this. It's just how human minds work, how your mind works, gently sifting through experience, finding patterns, creating meaning. Let's talk about something else, something a little deeper. The way emotional bonds create a kind of invisible synchronicity between people who are close. When you care deeply about someone, when you've spent significant time with them, something interesting happens in your brain. You develop what neuroscientists call shared neural representations. Parts of your brain that activate when you think about yourself also activate when you think about people you're close to. The boundary between self and other becomes a little blurred, a little softer. This doesn't mean you lose your sense of self, but it does mean that the people you love occupy a special place in your neural architecture. They're woven into how your brain represents the world. They're part of your emotional landscape. And when you share this kind of bond with someone, you often develop similar rhythms. You might feel tired at the same times, feel hungry at similar moments. Think about reaching out at comparable points in your day, not because of any mystical connection, but because you've synchronized the way people naturally do when they spend time together. So when you think of them just before they message you, it might be because you're both operating on similar schedules, responding to similar cues in your environment, moving through your days in complementary rhythms. Two separate people, yes, but connected by pattern and habit and shared experience. Your brain is also constantly running simulations. Right now, even as you rest, even as you drift, parts of your mind are imagining possible futures. What you'll do tomorrow, what you might say to someone, how a conversation might unfold. This is called predictive processing, and it's fundamental to how your brain works. Your mind is not passively receiving information from the world. It's actively generating predictions about what will happen next, and then comparing those predictions to what actually occurs. When you think about someone, particularly someone you communicate with regularly, your brain might be running a simulation, imagining what they might say, preparing you for potential interaction. This happens so quickly, so automatically, that you don't even notice it's happening. All you experience is the thought of the person floating through your mind. And when they do message you, it feels like your thoughts summoned them. But really, your brain was just doing what it always does, predicting, preparing, keeping you ready for connection. This is your mind taking care of you, making sure you're prepared for the people and situations that matter most to you. It's actually quite beautiful when you think about it. This constant, caring, predictive activity happening beneath your awareness. There's something else to consider, something about timing and availability. When do you usually think about the people in your life? Often, it's when you have a quiet moment, when you're not occupied with demanding tasks, when your mind has space to wander. And when do people often reach out to you? During their quiet moments, during breaks in their day, when they're not occupied with demanding tasks, when their mind has space to think of you. So there's a natural overlap. The times when you're likely to think of someone are often the same times when they're likely to think of you. Early morning, during lunch breaks, in the evening after work, late at night before sleep. These are the communal quiet spaces in our days, the moments when connection becomes possible. It's not that your thought caused their message. It's that you're both responding to similar rhythms of modern life, both finding the same pockets of time for connection and reflection, both existing in the same temporal flow. Let's drift even deeper now. Let your breathing slow. Feel the weight of your body sinking into whatever surface supports you, and let's consider the role of emotional memory. Certain feelings, certain emotional states, can trigger thoughts of specific people. If you're feeling happy, you might think of the friend who makes you laugh. If you're feeling uncertain, you might think of the person who usually offers you guidance. If you're feeling lonely, you might think of the people you wish were near. These associations build up over time. They become automatic. And what's interesting is that emotional states can be contagious, even across distance. Not literally, but through shared experience. If something happens in the world, if there's a news event or a cultural moment, or even just a particular kind of weather, multiple people might experience similar emotional responses. And if that emotional response triggers thoughts of connection, you might think of someone at the same time they think of you. Not because you're reading each other's minds, but because you're both responding to the same external triggers, filtered through similar emotional frameworks. Your minds, separately but simultaneously, reaching for connection. There's research on something called thin slicing, the ability of humans to make accurate judgments and predictions based on tiny slivers of information. Your brain is extraordinarily good at this. It picks up on micro patterns that your conscious mind never explicitly notices. You might not consciously realize that your friend always texts you after their yoga class, but your brain has noticed. It has registered the pattern in the background. And so, around that time, your friend might drift into your thoughts, not for any reason you can articulate, but because your pattern recognition system has learned the schedule. Similarly, you might not consciously know that your sibling tends to reach out when they're stressed, and that they tend to be stressed on Monday afternoons. But your brain has picked up on the correlation. And so, on Monday afternoons, you might find yourself thinking about them, your mind preparing you for potential contact. This is all happening beneath the surface of your awareness, your brain serving you, connecting you, keeping you attuned to the people who matter. Let's talk about something that might seem unrelated at first, but connects beautifully to our topic: the concept of neural shortcuts. Every time you think about a person, every time you interact with them, you're strengthening the neural pathways associated with them. Think of these pathways like trails through a forest. The more often you walk a particular trail, the more defined it becomes. The easier it is to find. The more naturally your feet carry you down that path. For people you think about frequently, people you're close to, the neural pathways are like superhighways. It takes very little to activate them. A similar name, a shared memory, a familiar context, and suddenly that person is present in your thoughts. This means that for your closest connections, the threshold for thinking about them is very low. They're always, in a sense, just beneath the surface of your awareness, ready to emerge with the slightest trigger. And if the trigger is something that makes them think of you at the same time, well, then you have your coincidence. Both of you, brought to each other's minds by the same external cue, traveling down well-worn neural pathways toward the thought of connection. There's something deeply comforting in understanding this. It means you're not alone, even when you're physically separated from the people you care about. It means your brain is always working to maintain those connections, always keeping those people close in your mental landscape. It means that the thought of someone, the sudden appearance of their face in your mind, is evidence of how much they matter to you, how deeply they're woven into your cognitive architecture. And when they message you just after you've thought of them, it's a kind of proof that you matter to them too, that they're thinking of you in their quiet moments, that your connection is real and active and mutual. Not magic, not telepathy, but something equally meaningful, the evidence of bonds that persist across distance, the proof of patterns built through shared experience, the demonstration that relationships create their own kind of synchronicity. Your mind is also influenced by what psychologists call priming. If you see something that reminds you of a person, even peripherally, even without conscious awareness, it can make you more likely to think about them. You might walk past a restaurant where you once had dinner with a friend. You might hear a song that reminds you of your partner. You might see a color that matches the shirt your sibling always wears. And these small exposures, these tiny reminders, they prime your brain. They activate the neural networks associated with that person. You might not consciously connect the restaurant or the song or the color to the person. You might just suddenly find yourself thinking about them, seemingly out of nowhere. And if they happen to message you shortly after, it feels like an inexplicable coincidence. But there was a cause, just one you didn't consciously register. A subtle trigger in your environment that brought them to mind right around the time they were thinking of you. Let your mind rest for a moment. Feel how your thoughts are becoming softer, more diffuse. How the boundary between sleeping and waking is becoming less distinct. This is exactly where we want to be. Conscious enough to listen, relaxed enough to drift. Let's consider the role of routine in creating these moments of apparent synchronicity. Human beings are creatures of habit. We tend to do the same things at the same times. We wake up at similar hours, eat meals at predictable intervals, take breaks at familiar points in our day. And within our relationships, we often develop shared routines, morning texts, lunchtime check-ins, evening conversations. These become so habitual that they fade into the background. You might not consciously think, "It's time for my friend to text me." But your brain has learned the pattern. It expects the contact. So you find yourself thinking about the person right before they reach out, not because of any mysterious connection, but because your brain has learned the schedule. It's anticipating the interaction, preparing you for connection. And when the message arrives, right on schedule, it confirms what your brain already knew. The pattern holds. The routine continues. The connection persists. There's something else worth considering. Something about the nature of modern communication. We're more connected now than ever before in human history. We carry devices that allow us to contact each other instantly, at any time, from anywhere. This means that the opportunities for these coincidences have multiplied exponentially. In an era when you might speak to someone once a week by phone, the chances of thinking about them exactly when they thought of you were quite small. But now, when you might exchange dozens of messages a day, the opportunities for synchronicity have expanded dramatically. More contact means more chances for overlap, more possibilities for your thought of someone to coincide with their thought of you. So while each individual instance might feel remarkable, the aggregate phenomenon is actually quite expected. With so many opportunities for coincidence, coincidences are bound to occur regularly. This doesn't diminish the meaning of these moments, but it does help explain their frequency. You're not experiencing something rare and mystical. You're experiencing something natural and probable, given the communication patterns of modern life. Let's drift back to the brain for a moment, to the beautiful complexity of how it processes time. Your brain doesn't experience time the way a clock does, as a steady, linear progression. Your subjective experience of time is flexible, influenced by attention, emotion, and memory. When something emotionally significant happens, time seems to slow down. When you're bored, time drags. When you're engaged, time flies. Your brain is constantly adjusting its temporal framework based on what matters to you. And here's something interesting. Your brain can subtly distort the order of events in memory. Two things that happened close together in time might get compressed in your recollection, so that they seem simultaneous even if they weren't. You might think of someone, and then a minute later they message you. But in your memory, these events might collapse together, so that it feels like your thought and their message were perfectly synchronized. Your brain, always seeking patterns, always trying to make sense of experience, connects them more tightly than they actually occurred. This isn't your brain lying to you. It's your brain doing what it's designed to do, creating coherent narratives from the scattered moments of experience, finding meaning in temporal proximity. There's also something to be said about the power of attention. What you focus on expands in your awareness. If you've had a few experiences of thinking about someone right before they contacted you, you might start paying attention to this phenomenon, looking for it, noticing it when it occurs. And the more you look for something, the more you see it. Not because it's happening more frequently, but because you're more attuned to it. Your attention has been primed. Your awareness has been sharpened. This is another kind of confirmation bias. Once you start noticing a pattern, you become more likely to continue noticing it. It becomes a lens through which you interpret experience. And that lens can make the pattern seem more prevalent than it actually is. But again, this doesn't mean you're wrong to notice. It just means that your attention is shaping your perception. And that's okay. That's human. That's how consciousness works. Let yourself relax even more deeply now. Feel how your muscles have softened, how your breath has slowed, how your thoughts are becoming less focused, more dreamlike. This is good. This is where we want to be. Let's consider something philosophers and neuroscientists have debated for centuries: the relationship between correlation and causation. When two things happen close together in time, it's natural to assume one caused the other. But correlation doesn't necessarily imply causation. You think of someone and they message you. These events are correlated. They occurred in close temporal proximity. But did one cause the other? Almost certainly not. There's no known mechanism by which your thought could trigger their action, especially if they're far away and unaware of your mental state. Instead, both events likely have common causes. The patterns we've been discussing. The routines, the emotional triggers, the environmental cues, the social rhythms that synchronize people who are connected. Understanding this doesn't make the experience less meaningful. If anything, it makes it more meaningful, because it reveals the intricate web of connection that exists between you and the people you care about, the subtle ways your lives are entangled, even across distance. Your brain is also constantly engaged in what's called predictive coding. It's not passively receiving information from your senses. Instead, it's actively generating predictions about what it expects to perceive, and then comparing those predictions to what actually comes in. When predictions match reality, your brain barely registers it. Everything is as expected. But when there's a mismatch, when something surprising happens, that's when you pay attention. That's when experience becomes memorable. So when you think of someone and they don't message you, your brain doesn't flag this as particularly noteworthy. It's just another moment in an ordinary day. But when you think of someone and they do message you, especially if it happens quickly, this mismatch between expectation and reality creates a memorable moment. Your brain sits up and takes notice. Over time, you accumulate more memories of the surprising matches than of the unsurprising mismatches. And this creates the impression that the phenomenon happens more often than it does. Not because you're miscounting, but because your memory is naturally biased toward the unexpected. There's something beautiful about the concept of social fields. The idea that groups of connected people create their own kind of collective pattern. Not a mystical field, but an emergent property of individual behaviors and interactions. When you're part of a close group, a family, a circle of friends, you all influence each other's rhythms. You adjust to each other's schedules, at least partially. You develop shared patterns of communication. You become synchronized, like pendulums hanging on the same wall gradually aligning their swings. And within this social field, thoughts of each other aren't random. They're structured by the patterns of the group, by the times you usually interact, by the emotional resonances you share, by the contexts that bring you together. So when you think of someone in your social field and they contact you, you're both operating within this shared structure, both responding to the same social rhythms, both part of the same pattern of connection. Let your awareness drift now. Don't hold on to any particular thought. Let these ideas float through your mind like clouds across a gentle sky. Some will catch your attention. Others will pass by unmemored. Both are fine. Both are perfect. Consider the role of intention. Not magical intention that reaches across space, but the simple human intention to maintain connection. When you care about someone, you intend to stay in touch with them. This intention, even when not consciously active, influences your behavior in subtle ways. You might be more likely to check your phone around the times you usually hear from them, more likely to think about them during your communication windows, more likely to feel a gentle pull toward contact. And they feel the same pull, the same intention to maintain connection. So you're both slightly biased toward reaching out, thinking about each other, maintaining the bond. And sometimes, these intentions align in time, creating the experience of synchronicity. Not because you're reading each other's minds, but because you're both trying to do the same thing, stay connected. And that shared intention creates opportunities for overlap. There's also something to consider about the nature of memory itself. Your memories aren't like video recordings, perfect captures of past experience. They're reconstructions, created anew each time you recall them. And each reconstruction is influenced by your current state, your current beliefs, your current understanding. If you believe that thinking of someone causes them to contact you, you might unconsciously adjust your memories to support this belief. The message that came 5 minutes after you thought of someone might, in recollection, seem to have come seconds after. The times when they didn't contact you might fade or be reframed. This isn't lying or delusion. It's the normal, natural process of memory. The way your brain creates coherent narratives from the scattered fragments of experience. The way meaning is constructed and reconstructed over time. Understanding this doesn't invalidate your memories, but it does suggest that the pattern might not be quite as strong or consistent as it feels. That your subjective experience, while real and valid, might be shaped by the expectations and beliefs you bring to it. Let's talk about something called the frequency illusion, or the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. It's the experience of noticing something for the first time and then suddenly seeing it everywhere. You learn a new word, and suddenly you hear it in multiple conversations. You notice a particular car model, and suddenly you see it on every street. This happens because learning about something makes your brain more attuned to it. You're not actually encountering it more frequently. You're just noticing it more often. Your attention has been activated. Your pattern recognition system has been engaged. The same thing can happen with thinking of someone before they contact you. Once you notice it happening, you become more alert to it. You start paying attention. And because you're paying attention, you notice it more often. The frequency illusion makes the phenomenon seem more common than it is. But again, noticing something doesn't mean it's not real. It just means your perception has been shaped by attention. And attention is part of how we navigate and make sense of the world. Your breath is so slow now, so steady. Your body is heavy and relaxed. Your mind is floating in that beautiful space between thought and no thought. Just perfect, just right. Let's consider quantum entanglement. Not because it explains this phenomenon. It doesn't. But because it's often invoked in discussions of apparently mysterious connections between people. And it's worth understanding why it doesn't apply here. Quantum entanglement is a real phenomenon in which particles that have interacted remain correlated, so that measuring one instantly affects the other, regardless of distance. It's strange and counterintuitive and absolutely real. But it operates at the level of subatomic particles in carefully controlled conditions, and it doesn't scale up to human consciousness. There's no known mechanism by which quantum entanglement could create mental connections between people. Your thoughts don't entangle with someone else's thoughts. Your brain states don't become correlated through quantum mechanical means. The reason people often invoke quantum mechanics in discussions of consciousness is because quantum mechanics is weird, and consciousness is weird, so there's a temptation to explain one weirdness with another. But the weirdnesses are different. They operate at different scales. They follow different rules. The synchronicity you experience with people you're close to has much simpler explanations. The ones we've been exploring: pattern recognition, shared routines, emotional bonds, predictable communication habits, memory biases. These are more than sufficient to explain the phenomenon. No quantum mechanics required. Let your mind wander now. Let these thoughts drift away like leaves on a stream. You don't need to hold on to anything. You don't need to analyze or understand or remember. Just let the words wash over you, gentle and soothing, as you sink deeper into relaxation. Think about the ways technology has changed our experience of connection. 100 years ago, if you thought of someone, your options for contact were limited. You could write a letter, which might take days or weeks to arrive. You could make a phone call if you both had phones. But mostly, thoughts were just thoughts. They lived in your head, private and contained. Now, thoughts can become actions instantly. You think of someone, and within seconds, you can text them, call them, video chat with them, send them a photo, share a link. The distance between thinking and communicating has collapsed to nearly nothing. This means that many of your thoughts about people quickly become communications with them. The thought and the message are temporally compressed, and this compression creates more opportunities for your thought of someone to coincide with their thought of you. You're both living in an environment where thoughts easily become messages, where the barrier between internal and external has become permeable, where connection is always just a tap away. There's something worth saying about the role of loneliness and desire for connection. When you miss someone, when you wish they were present, you think about them more often. And you're also more likely to notice when they contact you, more likely to remember those moments, more likely to find them meaningful. Loneliness makes you attuned to connection. It sensitizes you to the presence of the people you care about, even their digital presence. And this heightened sensitivity can make synchronicities feel more frequent and more significant. This isn't a problem. It's actually quite beautiful. It means that your longing for connection is part of what creates the experience of connection. Your desire to be close to someone makes you more aware of the ways you're already close, more appreciative of the moments when distance is bridged. Let everything soften now. Your face, your hands, your thoughts, just soft, just easy, just drifting. Consider the vast number of thoughts you have in a day. Thousands upon thousands. Most of them fleeting, barely conscious. Your mind is constantly active, constantly generating ideas, memories, associations, predictions, fantasies, worries, plans. Among those thousands of thoughts, many are about people. Your family, your friends, your colleagues, people from your past, people you hope to see. Your mind is a social organ, constantly processing relationships, constantly maintaining your connection to the network of people who populate your life. With so many thoughts about so many people, the chances that one of those thoughts will coincide with a message from that person are actually quite high. It's not that you're predicting their contact. It's that you think about them so often that sometimes your thoughts and their messages will overlap by pure chance. And those moments of overlap are the ones you remember. The thousands of thoughts that don't coincide with messages fade away, unnoticed and unremarked. But the handful that do coincide stand out, get remembered, accumulate into a pattern that feels meaningful. There's also something to be said about the emotional intensity of surprise. When something unexpected happens, your brain releases neurotransmitters that enhance memory formation. That's why surprising moments tend to be more memorable than ordinary ones. That's why you can probably remember dozens of surprising coincidences, but can't recall the thousands of ordinary, non-coincidental moments that made up the bulk of your experience. When you think of someone and they immediately message you, the surprise of the coincidence causes your brain to encode that memory more strongly, to flag it as significant, to ensure you'll remember it. And over time, you build up a collection of these strongly encoded memories, these highlighted moments, and they create the impression of a frequent pattern, even if the actual frequency isn't particularly high. Your brain is designed to help you navigate the world by noticing patterns, and it does this, in part, by making surprising patterns more memorable. This is useful for learning about real regularities in your environment, but it can also make coincidences feel more meaningful than they statistically are. Drift deeper now. Let the words become more like a gentle rhythm than like information. You don't need to follow every sentence. You don't need to track every thought. Just let the sound be soothing. Let the ideas float by like dreams. The people you're closest to occupy a special place in your cognitive landscape. They're not just external to you. They're part of how you understand yourself, part of how you navigate the world. When you think about yourself, when you consider your own preferences and values and goals, you often do so in relation to these important people. This means they're never really far from your thoughts. They're woven into your moment-to-moment experience in subtle ways. A constant, gentle presence in the background of your awareness. Not always at the forefront, but always accessible, always near. So when they move from the background to the foreground, when they suddenly occupy the center of your attention, it doesn't require any special explanation. They were always there, in a sense, always part of your mental landscape. They just became visible, became focal. And if that moment of becoming focal happens to coincide with them thinking of you, with them reaching out, well, that's a beautiful thing. Not magic, not telepathy, but the evidence of how deeply connected you are, how thoroughly they're integrated into your sense of self and world. Let's think for a moment about the nature of relationships themselves. Relationships are patterns. Patterns of interaction, patterns of communication, patterns of emotional exchange. When you have a relationship with someone, you're both participating in creating and maintaining these patterns. And patterns have rhythms, regularities, predictabilities. Even in relationships that feel spontaneous and free, there are underlying structures, times when you're more likely to connect, topics you tend to discuss, moods that tend to align. These patterns exist in time. They unfold over hours and days and weeks. And because you're both participating in the same patterns, your behaviors naturally synchronize to some degree. Not perfectly, not always, but enough that moments of alignment are more common than pure chance would predict. When you think of someone and they contact you, you're both responding to the same underlying pattern, the pattern of your relationship, the rhythm you've created together. And that's why it happens. Not because of any mysterious force, but because relationships create structure, and structure creates predictability. Your body is so relaxed now, so still. Maybe you've forgotten where your hands are. Maybe your awareness of the room has faded. That's perfect. That's exactly right. Just drift with these words, no effort, no strain, just gentle floating. Think about the way conversations have their own momentum. When you're in regular contact with someone, when you're in the midst of an ongoing exchange, thoughts of them come more easily. They're more accessible, more present in your mind. And during these periods of active connection, these windows when a conversation is unfolding over hours or days, the chances of thinking about them right before they message you are quite high. Because you're both engaged in the same exchange, both thinking about the conversation, both likely to reach out. So the synchronicity might not be as remarkable as it feels. It might just be the natural flow of an active conversation. Both participants thinking about the exchange, both likely to add to it, both operating within the temporal structure of back-and-forth communication. There's something philosophers call the anthropic principle. The idea that we should take into account the fact that we're observers when we think about the universe. That our existence as conscious observers constrains what we're likely to see. Something similar applies here. You only notice the coincidence when it happens. You don't notice all the times you think of someone and they don't contact you. You don't notice all the times they contact you and you weren't just thinking of them. You only notice the overlap, the moments of apparent synchronicity. This creates what's called an observation selection effect. The data you have available to you is biased by the fact that you're only aware of certain moments. You can't observe the counterfactuals. You can't directly experience the alternative timeline in which you didn't think of them, or they didn't message you. So your evidence for the phenomenon is necessarily biased, necessarily incomplete. And this bias can make patterns seem stronger than they are, can make coincidences seem more significant than statistics would support. But again, this doesn't mean your experience is invalid. It just means that interpreting experience requires awareness of these biases, requires understanding the limitations of personal observation. Let everything go now. Don't hold on to any thought. Don't try to remember anything. Just be here in this moment, breathing softly, existing gently as your mind drifts towards sleep. The ultimate answer to why you think of someone right before they message you is probably some combination of everything we've discussed. Pattern recognition and confirmation, bias and emotional bonds, and shared routines and selective memory, and the compression of experience in recollection, and the frequency illusion, and the surprising nature of coincidence, and the vast number of thoughts you have, and the rhythms of relationships, and the structure of modern communication, and the accessibility of important people in your cognitive landscape. All of these factors working together, creating moments that feel magical but have natural explanations, creating experiences that are meaningful even though they're not mysterious, creating connections that are real even though they're not supernatural. You're safe here, safe and comfortable and relaxed. Your breath is slow. Your heart is calm. Your mind is drifting into that beautiful space where thoughts dissolve and sleep approaches. The people you love are still part of you even when they're far away, still woven into your consciousness, still occupying space in your neural architecture. And when you think of them, when they suddenly appear in your awareness, it's evidence of how much they matter, how deeply they're integrated into who you are. And when they reach out just after you've thought of them, it's evidence that you matter to them too, that they're thinking of you, that the connection is mutual and real and ongoing. Not because of telepathy or cosmic forces or quantum entanglement, but because relationships create their own kind of gravity, their own patterns, their own synchronicities, and you're both moving within those patterns together, even when you're apart. Sleep is very close now. You might already be dreaming. The boundary between these words and your own thoughts might be dissolving. That's okay. That's beautiful. Just let it happen. The coincidence of thinking of someone before they message you is a small miracle. Not the miracle of the supernatural, but the miracle of connection. The miracle of how brains work. The miracle of how relationships persist across distance and time. The miracle of how patterns emerge from the chaos of everyday life. You don't need to understand it completely. You don't need to explain it. You can just appreciate it. Just marvel at it. Just let it remind you that you're connected to other people in ways both obvious and subtle. In ways you can see and ways you can't. In ways that are conscious and ways that aren't. Let your thoughts drift now. Let them become dreams. Let the words fade into silence. Let sleep come gently, naturally, as you rest in the knowledge that you're connected, always connected, to the people who matter, to the patterns that hold, to the rhythms that sustain. The messages will come, the thoughts will arise, the synchronicities will happen, and you can simply appreciate them without needing to explain them, without needing to solve them, just noticing, just marveling, just being grateful for connection. Sleep now, just sleep. Everything is as it should be. Everything is connected in its own way. And you are part of that connection, always, even in sleep, even in dreams, always connected, always held, always gently thought of by those who care. Rest now, the explanations can fade, the questions can dissolve. Just rest in the comfort of knowing you're not alone, never alone. Even when you think you are, there are people thinking of you, people about to reach out, people whose minds hold you close. And that's enough. That's everything. Just that simple truth, just that gentle knowing, as you drift now, as you sleep, as consciousness fades into dreams. Connected, always connected, in ways mysterious and ways mundane, in ways magical and ways mechanical, all of it real, all of it meaningful, all of it yours. Sleep well, sleep deep. Let the connections hold you as you rest. Let the patterns keep you as you dream. Let the synchronicities remind you, even in sleep, that you matter to someone, that you're thought of, that you're loved. Good night, gentle dreams, and may you wake knowing that the connections are real, the patterns are true, and the people who message you are thinking of you just as you think of them. Always, in its own quiet way, always.